Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Football Experience brought to you by On the Pod. I'm Caleb. He's Nev. Nev, how you doing?
Fantastic. I feel like I have a lot of energy, and I don't know if it's just summer or if it's because the Champions League final is tomorrow.
We're going to go for the latter and focus on that, I think, tonight. And this is our last. I'm pumped. You're pumped. It's the last preview pod of the season for the last game, the biggest game of the season, the showpiece event of European football. And the way I wanted to sort of preview it tonight would be I want to start with the bigger picture, then go to like a sort of mid-level picture, and then have a look at how we think the game itself might pan out. Um, and to start tonight, I want to read you a list, and I want you to tell me what you think that list relates to. Just a broad guess of it's the history of something. So if I read you this list, Real Madrid, Benfica, Inter Milan, Ajax, Bayern, Liverpool, Milan, Real Madrid, Milan, Manchester United, Bayern, Real Madrid, Liverpool. What do you think that list is?
I was gonna say the most winningest teams, but I don't think that's right because I think Inter have three. You didn't mention Barcelona, did you?
No.
No. Um, and it's not the most recent winners either.
No, they're all those most winning teams are there, except for
Yeah,
Barcelona, which
yeah,
I want to get into. And you might notice that some were red twice as well. So
yeah. I'm guessing. I was gonna say back-to-back winners.
close. A lot of them are.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you now?
Go on.
So basically, it's a very basic version of the history of the European Cup / Champions League. And the formula that I used to come up with this was within 5 years, within 5 seasons, you have to have made three finals within that time frame, which is what Liverpool have accomplished. And in doing so, the only club to do it sort of in this time frame of 5 years. So we started with Real Madrid from 55 to 60. And I also put like a point system next to it to sort of weight it, of 2 points if you won the thing and 1 point if you just made the final and had a runners up. Um, and within that 5 years, so from the very start, Real Madrid 55 to 60, the ultimate like kickoff to this tournament, winning all five and getting 10 points, which I don't know if that will ever be achieved again. We came close in recent history, but and then I sort of had a little bit, and then they had another period straight after that, 61 to 66, where they made two finals and won one. But the dominant team of that time from 60 to 65 was Benfica with Eusebio. Um, Back-to-back finals wins and another finals appearance, I think, a few years later. Then Inter sort of took the mantle after Benfica won their back-to-back. Inter went 63 and 64 back-to-back, or 64 and 65, I think, when I started the seasons. And they made another final. And then, of course, Ajax takeover with Johan Cruyff. You could have chosen, well, in fact, they made a final in 60, 69, lost it, and then Feyenoord had the distinction of being the first Dutch champion of Europe to take it away. But then I guess that made Ajax a little bit mad, so they went on and won back to back to back in the early 70s. And then I guess the story of that period from 70 to 76 is Cruyff versus Beckenbauer, because those two names are the ones that always pop up when we're going for the elite honours, be it three-peating in the Champions League, with which Ajax did in the early 70s, and then Bayern did it the next 3 seasons after Ajax did it. And then obviously the World Cup final in '74, where Beckenbauer and Germany got the better of Cruyff and the Dutch. So there's Bayern, and then Liverpool take over the mantle from '76 to '81. I believe they win all three of their finals that they're in that period. And then if you want to do a little bit of overlap, they sort of extend it from 80 to 85, where they make, I know that there's one that crosses over one of the finals, but they make another couple of finals in there and win another one. And then, side note, I mean, what happened at Hazel was obviously terrible, and Liverpool got punished. But how much further could they have extended that? Maybe all the way up until when Milan took over in the late '80s, won those back-to-backs, and then made another final. If you want overlap on that one, they also won one after that 5 years. So if you extended it to six years, they would have had 7 points for that period. But obviously, that's not the criteria. Real Madrid in the Galacticos late '90s made three finals, won three finals, which is worrying for me going into this match because this whole narrative of Real not losing finals really takes hold in this century, really. Then Milan from '02 to '07. They win two, lose one, obviously famously in Istanbul. The next period was a funny one because we had Man United and Bayern Munich both finished with 4 points for their so they won one and lost two finals in that period. I can see the United argument for them being, but they only won one. Same with Bayern. So maybe the 4 point, and I'll get to this when I finish, but the 4 points, it's not quite your trophy for those 5 years, if you get what I'm saying. You're not quite the top dog. You're one of them, but you're not always the top dog if you make three finals but lose two. So that one was tricky. And then need I say much more, from 13 to 18, Real Madrid do the second best 5-year performance by making four finals and winning all four finals for 8 points. And now we have Liverpool. And the point was, from 17 to 22, Liverpool have made two finals, lost one, three finals, sorry, lost one, won one. And now it all sort of, if they win this final, they get to 5 points and they join the likes of the great Liverpool sides, the Inter side, the Milan side of the early part of the century. So then you are the best team in Europe for that 5 years. I think, in terms of this competition anyway. And that's another point that I want to get into as well. But if you're only on 4 points, you're more like a Real Madrid in the early '60s, where Benfica were the better side, even though they still got 4 points there. And Bayern and Man United were fighting it out at the start of the 2010s or the late 2000s. So it's a tricky one. And I think that's what's on the line for Liverpool. If they win this, they have a real claim when you look back at the history books that you could say they were the best team in Europe for this 5-year period. And I guess I wanted to get your thoughts on that after I've just given you that big spiel about my deep dive.
Well, I guess and one counter argument that I've heard from some pundits, or one in particular that I seem to agree with quite a bit. The whole notion of the Champions League, and I know, obviously it got reformatted back in the early '90s. It's in the name, Champions League. You get into the Champions League by winning your respective league, domestic league, and Liverpool have only done it once in the past 30 years, and yet they've won multiple Champions League titles in the past 30 years. They've won two. Correct? Yeah. But they won one domestic title as well. And then the following season, after they've been the domestic champion, they got knocked out by Atletico, right? Yeah, and that, look, they obviously had the injury to Van Dijk last year and everything, so that was a very iffy season for them. But yeah, it's, for me, it's hard to really acknowledge being the best team overall if you're not winning your domestic title. And I guess you could sort of make that the same argument for Real Madrid winning with the three-peat. I don't think Zidane won the domestic title, or he won it like in his final season. Because like Barcelona was pretty much dominating.
Second.
Yeah, so
I
like
believe it was in the second season.
Yeah, so like
in the 16-17.
Yeah, so they three-peat, but they don't win the domestic title. So but then obviously you get into the argument of how important is the domestic title versus a Champions League, because in Champions League you play 13 games including the final, whereas in the league you play over 38 games, and that shows, I guess, your consistency against teams that you can't be complacent against, and teams that that you obviously have to step up your game for, like in the big games. The other argument, if you're going to argue, especially for this year, Liverpool's run to the final. Like, people like to discount, I guess, England and Croatia's run to the final. Well, England didn't make the final, but like Croatia's run to the final in the World Cup, or even England's run to the semi-final in the World Cup, last World Cup, the one in Russia, 2018. Yes, that was an easier side of the draw because you had like Germany not going through, and had they have gone through, I'm pretty sure they would have been on that side of the draw. I think there was one other team that really faltered. Netherlands weren't in the World Cup from memory, and neither were Italy. So I guess them not qualifying also could have had an impact on that side of the draw as well. But are we going to discount the draw that Liverpool have had, because they managed to avoid Ajax, who were looking fantastic.
All right. I'm ready to go in straight away on this point, because this point really annoys me.
All right.
Are we totally discounting the group stage of the competition? Because we, in our group, had a Porto team that have gone on that only recently ended some ridiculous 66 or 67 unbeaten run in Portugal. We had the newly crowned Italian champions in AC Milan, and we had the champions of Spain in Atletico Madrid. Are we completely discounting that we had the group of death now? And, by the way, we won all 6 of those games. We won every single game against those teams.
Yeah, that's fine, but at the same time, look, now looking forward, yes, AC Milan won the Italian league, but weren't we sort of discounting the Italian league based on its overall strength compared to other leagues, like not 1 or 2 pods ago? So now you're arguing for it, but whereas a couple of pods ago we're sort of diminishing that league. The Portuguese league, look, let's be fair, it's the Portuguese league. It's like probably the 7th strongest league, maybe 6th, 7th strongest league. And yeah, Atletico were the champions of Spain last year.
But I'm not just saying Portuguese league. I'm saying the 66 or 67 game unbeaten run. This team coming into the competition with confidence
in the Portuguese league.
And they were just dismantled.
Yeah, in the Portuguese league.
Not teams don't do that every year, do they? Teams don't go on 66 and 67 games unbeaten runs every year. If Portugal was that easy, we would hear about it every single year. But it doesn't happen because this Porto team's actually a good team. You can't just discount that like that. The Italian league's still the 4th strongest league in the world. Now, I would argue it's maybe the 3rd as well, above the Bundesliga at the moment. Although the Bundesliga was somewhat saved by Eintracht going all the way and winning the Europa League. But I think you can make an argument the Italian league is... So like PSG were the champions of the French league, which is the 5th strongest league. So if we go by that metric, I mean, we've got to take it into account with the eye test as well. AC Milan were in that argument for the 8th best team. Inter were also in that argument. So I don't know. I just that topic gets me hot straight away. And it's not like Ajax and Bayern weren't on our side of the draw. They didn't do what was necessary to play us. So how good were they really?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not our fault. They ducked us and they didn't play us.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you guys had the luck of the draw. Like, yes, you had those two teams on your
No, that's
side.
not luck. Those teams lost those games and couldn't even play us. That's not luck.
You managed to play inferior teams.
How were they inferior if they beat the opposition we were meant to play? How? How does that add up?
On paper, and going into those
On
games,
paper, football's not played on paper.
would
away.
you have said Benfica to beat Ajax first of all?
No, definitely. And I wouldn't have said Villarreal to beat Bayern, but they couldn't beat those teams. And we could. It's like directly after we just showed, hey, this is how you actually beat this team.
You still cannot argue against the fact that you've had an easier run to the final than Real Madrid.
And Real. Yeah, and I'm not arguing that at all. But I'm saying our run has not been garbage, even in the knockout stage. We still played the champions of Italy at that time, Inter Milan, the only team to beat us in the competition. And then we had to play a Benfica team that's, look, I'll admit, that Benfica team had no business beating Ajax, but they still beat them, and Ajax couldn't hold on. And then it's somewhat the same with Villarreal, although in the lead-up we were talking about how we weren't as confident, or I was talking about how I wasn't as confident with Bayern, but like when that team beats the team that they weren't meant to beat, but then the team the team who were meant to play it, like Liverpool, beat them straight away after. I just think it's just you guys couldn't even make it to play us. Like, what are we talking about here? If the whole other side of the draw had every single good team, and then this side of the draw had no good teams, then fair enough. But that's not exactly how it worked out. But I will admit the other side was stronger, and Real have had a harder route to the final. In the knockout stage. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and that's my whole point. You guys have had an easier run to the final because you've had... I think overall as well, over the balance of the teams, like on both sides, I think there was stronger teams on the other side as well. Like, not just like the stronger teams going through, but there were stronger teams overall on that side, which Real Madrid had to go through. And like we said, for instance, we said Bayern were looking like very weak this season, and I guess that proved in the fact that they got beat by or knocked out by Villarreal as well. And the argument is like the argument for Liverpool and everything is you can only beat what's in front of you. So and that's the same argument like within the league, like, you know, like when you thrash like the middle of the table or the bottom of the table teams. Well, what were you supposed to do? Were you supposed to go over and draw to them or lose to them? Like, no, you have to obviously beat what's put in front of you. Like, it doesn't matter how you beat it, but you know, you have to get over that competition. But that's I'm asking you the question then. Because of Liverpool's easier run, and because the fact that they've only been champions of England once over the past 5 years, albeit and like we've talked about this, if you like their points, I saw their points tally. I think over the past 5 years, or since Klopp and Guardiola have come through, I think Guardiola holds a 1 point lead over like an accumulation of points, league points. So, and Klopp's lost the league twice to City by a margin of 1 point. So, and with any in any other league or in any other year, that points tally would have won him the league. So yes, he's going up against a fantastic Man City side and a fantastic manager in Guardiola, but they still aren't able to then back up the league performance as well. So like that, and that's why I'm also putting that out there. Like it's called the Champions League. It's not called the runners-up of your domestic league competition. So like I'm just posing that question: how can you call a team the best in I guess over a 5-year span or something if they're not also winning their domestic league?
So is the argument you want to make that the Premier League and La Liga and the Bundesliga and Serie A and Liga 1 are more important leagues and better quality leagues and more important to clubs and people's legacies than the Champions League? Is that what you're trying to ask? If I would agree with that point?
No, I guess
Because
my
hell
question
no,
is
the
also
Champions
relating to
League
the
is the most
format.
prestigious. It's the highest level of competition at club football. If people want to dispute that, those people have no business having opinions on football. The Champions League is quite comfortably the highest level of club football in the world. Your performance in that directly influences how you will be perceived in the history books, more so than league titles. That's my contention. That's the first thing I look at when I see a club or a player's performance. What do they do on the elite stage, the
Yes,
highest stage?
but you're having teams entering that competition that are finishing third or fourth in their domestic
And what's
in
your
their
point?
domestic
They're
competition.
still finishing third or fourth in strong European leagues. Vis-a-vis, that's why this is the elite of the elite. So what's the point?
Well, the point is, like, how can you be considered the best team over a 5 or 6 year span or whatever it is if you're not also winning your domestic league? If you're only winning a
Because
cup
you're
competition.
performing and you're winning and you're making finals in the competition for the elite European clubs, the best of the best.
In a
That's
13 game competition.
Hey, I've already put out my idea to fix that. If that's what really bothers you, but I've never heard you complain about the Champions League like this before. So what, you want it to go back to European Cup days where we only have the winner of each league?
It's an argument. I think it's an argument to be had. And that's why, and I think I've said this before, that's why like back before they reformatted the Champions League, some people did consider the UEFA Cup, which was the secondary competition, same as Europa Cup, they considered that a superior competition because you had teams that were finishing second, third, fourth in their leagues that were, I guess you could say, would it be more saturated of really strong teams, whereas like for instance with the Champions League you were going up against like minnows from other leagues that can't even get out of the group stages now, and they would be making the finals of the Champions League back then. So that's why, like I said, the UEFA Cup was by some considered the stronger competition. Maybe not the most prestigious, but the stronger competition. And then obviously...
Whoa. So if you want to make that argument that that's the stronger competition, are we not playing the strongest possible competition in the Champions League? Because now you have not only all the league champions, but you also have all those teams who would have been in the old UEFA Cup. So I don't understand. Like, do you just want the name changed? Let's not call it the Champions League. Let's just call it the Elite European Clubs Cup.
Yeah, I guess you... Look, my whole point is, and I'm asking more of a question to your, I guess, lead up, is how can you be...
I already answered that.
Yeah, and I don't agree with it. And the same with Man City as well. Like they haven't won at least one Champions League since Guardiola has come there, but they've won four domestic leagues. So,
okay, all right. So follow-up question to your question: what is the criteria to be the dominant club in Europe over a 5-year stretch? Then
I think if we're going to go 5 years, I think you need to win the majority of your domestic leagues, so 3 as a minimum, 3, and I'd say 2. You need to win 2 European cups. Well, actually, that's vague because that means a Europa League. 2 Champions Leagues, and make at least the semis of the other 3 years that you didn't win it. I'd say that gives you, because because a lot of people say the Barca team from the 2010s, that's what they achieved. They achieved multiple semi-finals. They achieved 2 finals under Guardiola. But they won, I think, like 4 La Liga titles.
So you're happy with a team like that Barcelona who showed time and time again, and why they didn't get in the list. And I'm splitting hairs, so I'm being harsh. But they showed time and time again that they could win in a format where they got to play more minnows and more mismatches in a league season. But then when the pressure got really, really tense and the lights shone really bright, they often folded before they got to the big dance and the big stage. So are we happy for those teams to be the dominant teams in Europe? And I'm saying Barcelona were definitely a dominant team, and I was surprised that they didn't make the list. But there is value, and the most value for me, in this competition where you play the best of the best. It's the condensed form of football. And I've said before that there's a ways to make it fairer, in that the winner we get will be the best team of the year. But for the meantime, this is the best gauge we have, in my view.
I'd still say that you need to win your league title as well as the Champions League.
And then if you want to look into this specific case with that, and you already, I guess, somewhat argued against your point, Liverpool have lost 2 of these titles by a point when they've made record runners-up points tallies in 97 and 92. That is the most ever. The next is 89 by United. So in any other season, they would have won 3 league titles. So you've got to contextualize that as well.
But if we're looking at the history books, and I've made this point before, and it is an unfortunate point. Are we going to really contextualize it, or are we just going to look, Man City winners, Liverpool runners-up? Are we going to really look at, it came down to the final day, it came down to the final 20 minutes of the final day to really decide it? And Man City were, especially this league, this year's league, Man City were 20 minutes away from throwing it away, and they were 2-0 down as well. So we're not going to unfortunately, we're not going to contextualize it in 10, 15, 20 years. We're going to people are just going to look at the history books and they're just going to say winners and runners up. And that's it.
Well, not people who care. People who care will look at it
like
Liverpool
fans.
No, just people who care about who the best team over 5. So give me who else would be the best team in Europe over this 5-year stretch then?
I don't think anyone's really been as consistent, because if we're going 5 years, that takes us back to 27. Will that take us back to 2016, 17?
17, 18.
17, 18. But that takes us to 22, 23 then. So that takes us into next season. So it would be 16, 17. Because we started 21, 22. So if it's 16, 17, that includes Real.
5 seasons, man. 5 seasons is 17, 18. 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, 20, 21, 21, 22.
I don't think any team's been really that consistent. Like in terms of, because like the European, the Champions League's been shared. Like there's been no back-to-back winners.
So you don't think Real Madrid from 97 to 02 were the dominant force in Europe with the Galacticos and winning 3 out of 5? But they never won it back-to-back.
Well, I was like, 7, 8 years old then. I wasn't really watching football back then.
Well, what about Real Madrid from 13 to 18?
Yeah, I'd say they were a dominant
then your league
team.
Title thing
goes
against it as well.
Yeah, because they only won one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what are you got to look at first? Are you got to look at the fact that they won back to like we look at Ajax and Bayern in the 70s? Do we look at their Bundesliga and their Eredivisie titles before we look at their Champions League titles?
Look, I'm just saying it's not as black and white as just looking at the
I
Champions League.
understand that, but I understand that, but I'm saying there's things need to be weighted and things need to be prioritized. And for me to try and argue that the league carries as much weight as the Champions League, I think it's just wrong. There's a reason why the Champions League is the Champions League. I get maybe the name change argument. But anyway, I guess we debated that long enough. I don't think there's been another team over the last 5 years who can match what Liverpool have done in terms of league performance and definitely Champions League performance, because they're the only club who meet the criteria of making 3 finals in 5 years. And like I said, when you do that over history, you tend to get a history of the European Cup, with the exception of Barcelona, who I wanted to make a little point about. I think over that time, they seem to be, and anyone who knows like basketball history will know this, but they seem to be the San Antonio Spurs of that era, where they go from, in this century, I think 06 was the first one, and then they get 09, they get 11, and then they get 15. But they never make 3 finals in a 5-year spell to meet the criteria. But they keep collecting them over this, sort of 10, 11-year span. So the only fault I have in sort of that basic history of the European Cup is the fact that Barcelona were not mentioned when using that criteria.
Yeah,
but I think for the most part, it gives you a pretty accurate representation of the top of European football over the years.
Yeah, but like I've seen players, for instance, they've say like that. I think that sort of like that span from like 08 to like that Guardiola team. Despite they don't meet your criteria, I've seen players say that that's the best team to have like played football. Or like and then before that, people were saying that that Saki team from the AC Milan team that won back-to-back in
exactly. It's a big cycle.
Yeah, and they didn't. Did they make your criteria or no?
Yeah. Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, because they were in the final in, was it 92 or 91? Again,
I believe it was 93.
Yeah, but they lost that final. No, didn't they? They lost. I swear they lost the final though. Like they only and then they won a final again, like 94 or something.
The final in 93, they lost to Marseille.
Yeah.
But they won those back-to-backs in 89 and 90.
Yeah. Look, all I'm saying is I don't think that it's all as black and white. And like you have your arguments to argue for it. I have my questions about it, I suppose, and that it's not like, and I'm willing to change my opinion as well. Like mine's not set in stone where I'm saying 100% that the Champions League should be reserved only for the champions of their leagues. Like I think that the format as it is currently is stronger, and I haven't been reading up the most up to date. Because it seems like every week that they're like, oh, the format's going to change in 2024. And I know we went over it, but it's almost like they're changing it again and again, like almost every week. And it seems like it's going to get even more diluted with more teams that shouldn't really be in it, if I'm not mistaken. So like, yeah, it's not as black and white as it all seems for me.
Yeah, that's fair, because we're in the moment, obviously. But I think if you look back, I'd be interested to know if you looked back at this list. I mean, is there any of these teams that I listed who had that sort of spell within 5 years, apart from one, which is a contradiction of itself in Real Madrid 61 to 66, where Benfica were a better team, but that was only because Benfica performed so well over that period. Is there any other instance where you'd say there's another club who has a dispute to say we were in fact the best team in Europe at that time?
I want to throw this one out there because like you mentioned, what was it with the European ban on English teams in the mid '80s?
After 85.
I think
Yeah.
I think that screwed over Everton because they had their little
Yeah.
3 year run.
Yeah.
So they I think like I'm not fully in like in the know-how of this history where I know it like word for word or whatever you want to say. Like I sort of know bits and parts of it, but from what I've heard, like the Everton fans absolutely hate you guys because of that as well. Because you guys, I think that incident ruined their chance at winning, and they were very strong candidates to win a European competition in those years. So from one perspective, you can even argue that, like, had there not have been a European ban on English teams, could Everton have won one or two or three competitions?
Yeah, of course. We'll never know. There's sort of just a blank period from there from Liverpool. Who I don't know. That's maybe another one. The one that overlaps from 80 to 85. That's one you can maybe question. Around that time, Juve were very strong, but again, they didn't come up on this list. They didn't make 3 finals in 5 years, which I think is a testament. Obviously, I think it's a good criteria in that, but that's maybe one you could talk about. That Juve team in '85 that did beat Liverpool, but yeah, no doubt Liverpool also, of course, screwed themselves over through no fault of anyone's involved with the club. But the supporters sort of screwed us over as well as Everton. So I know there's that history of them hating us for that one. But I guess, look, when I look at that list, I don't see many teams where, apart from United and Bayern, where they in around that 2010 time, that's the only one where obviously that's where you'd insert Guardiola. But Mourinho also won a treble in 2010 with Inter as well, and he was doing. Well, not everyone agreed with it, but he was doing pretty good things for Real Madrid around that time. But they could never crack through. And that's why they don't make the list. So maybe in dispute for that time, but the rest of the times I think they pretty well match up. For the intermediate sort of look at this game, I did a little bit of a dive into. You say it's a 13-game competition, and that's exactly what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to focus on if those 13 games were put into a league table of all the finalists from when the format changed in 03-04, of all those finalists, how many points were finalists racking up on their way to the final? And I must say the findings were a tad bit worrying as a Liverpool supporter, because Liverpool on their run to this final have racked up 31 points, which is the equal second most of any team over that span of time. The most, interestingly enough, with 34 points, 11 wins, no losses, and 1 draw, was Man City last season, and they couldn't finish the job. And then Real Madrid in 13-14 clinched it against Atletico, who also got 30 points on their way to the final. So that was a high caliber final. But they're the only three teams with that many points. But then when I lowered it down to 30 points en route to the final, which was a list of 8 previously, of that 8, only 4 went on and clinched the deal and won the final, which was somewhat worrying. And then on the flip side of that, Real Madrid are coming in with 24 points, 8 wins, 4 losses, no draws on the way to this final. And in that history from 03 to 04 to now, 8 teams have won the trophy with 25 points or less picked up on their way to the final. So, I mean, some years like 03, 04, Porto came in with 23 and Monaco came in with 21 points. So whichever way it went then, you would have got 25 or less. Same with 06, 07 Milan against Liverpool. And more recently, the Liverpool Spurs final of 18-19. Those teams both lost 4 games on their route to the final. So another, just before I let you give your thoughts on that, and I guess what it means in terms of for this season alone. I'll ask you a question on that, but just before I do, the team that really interested me in that COVID season, 1920, Bayern Munich, and I know it has to have an asterisk because they didn't have two-legged quarterfinals onwards, but Bayern Munich that season still racked up 30 points on their way to the final by winning 10 games and not drawing or not losing a singular game. They won every single game on their route to that final, which I thought was noteworthy in itself. I mean, City did well the next season, but to win every single game and then cap it off by winning the final is pretty remarkable. That team were clearly the best team that season. So with that being said, and I want to go into this after I get your viewpoint, but for this season alone, will Real Madrid winning this stamp them as the best team in Europe for this season?
I was about to actually question you as to where that Bayern Munich team was, but then you said that they only played one-legged ties from quarterfinals onwards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember them saying like, oh, they won like 11 games in a row or 12 games in a row or whatever.
It was 11.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe going back. Yeah.
Yeah. So like they were like. They had like that amazing run, but before you mentioned them, I thought, okay, mate, because I know they changed coach from Kovac to Flick, so I was like, okay, maybe they dropped some games and barely got out of the groups because I couldn't fully remember that, but yeah, like that, their run was just one of like absolute, like it seemed like it was very like dominant, like. Their players just came back stronger after COVID. It was almost like sort of like a Rocky montage. Like they go away for some time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then,
I was going to say I was so happy you used the word stronger as well because they came back jacked. All of those players, they just looked like they knew what they were doing in the time off.
And they came back like it seemed like they came like a mentally strong because I think they had like an incredible like. End to the domestic season as well, where they didn't drop a game. Didn't they go on like some kind of 20 or 30 game unbeaten run in all competitions as well under Flick? Like I'm pretty sure like they did some like absolutely crazy stuff like that. So like that's a really weird team because it almost seems like I know the team itself was like they had a lot of players from the Heinkes treble team, and then it had still some players remaining from Guardiola and everything, and all then like that I guess generation. But it almost seemed like a one season wonder because then they faltered the very next season. Like they seemed like a bit of a shadow of themselves. I know it's a weird one for me. Like it just seemed like they really took advantage of the whole situation with COVID and pretty much having like a pre-season break in the middle of the season, like to refresh themselves. Whereas the other teams didn't really. It seemed like they didn't really do that. They didn't look at it that way.
Yeah, my view on that, because I've grappled with that and sort of the NBA bubble and stuff. And when I think about that stuff, I just don't think you can lessen the achievement in any way, but you must. You've also got to look at it and know that it's a different achievement to what it normally would be. But I think in many ways, winning that type of championship is almost football in its purest form, where we haven't got the asterisks where you'd have of normal seasons. Maybe not as many asterisks about injuries or fatigue during a season. And really the purity comes from, look, you had all that time to get yourself right. Which clubs approached it the best and which clubs stayed mental and which clubs and players stayed mentally focused enough during a time where the world seemed like it was crumbling around us to go and focus on a task and win a championship like that. I think in many ways that's such a pure test of mental resilience. And you don't even have, like City's run last year, you don't necessarily have the biggest home and away leg advantages where you traditionally. So you give and you take in that situation. I don't think one can be diminished over the other, but you just respect that they're different accomplishments.
Yeah, and who better to do it than the Germans as well?
Yeah.
But what was your question in regards to Real Madrid?
If they were to go on and win the Champions League final, would you, when all's said and done, and you look over a list like this of Champions League winners, obviously, but more importantly, and there's only a couple, but there's sometimes differences between who the Champions League winner and who the best team in Europe is. If Real Madrid win this, have they done enough to put themselves as the best team in Europe for this particular season?
Oh, that's such a hard one because if you put it all into context, like, all right, so they beat Chelsea, who were last year's winners. They beat Man City, who were the favourites. Like, and then Liverpool were second after City. Like, we have to acknowledge that. And they beat PSG as well. And like a PSG that was expected to, like, they signed players in. I know Ramos he's barely played the season because of injuries and stuff, but like they had like what 5 signings? They had like Donnarumma, Ramos, Hakimi, Messi, and I swear they had some other big name signing, but like
Wijnaldum.
Yeah, but I think they had someone else as well in there. But yeah, they had like 5 or 6 big signings that were. It's like, okay, they're the favorites, but they couldn't obviously get them to all gel together because they're all big egos, and for whatever reason, the players control the change room instead of the manager. So whatever's going on there, that's their problem. But like, yeah, Real Madrid overcame. You'd say so the favorite in Man City, probably the third favorite in Chelsea going into the season. Going into the season, people were expecting Chelsea to potentially win the Premier League with the signings that they made, like especially bringing in Lukaku, who's like a 20 or 30 goal per season striker.
Even when we started the pod, I was having Chelsea as the third best team in Europe and the third favourites for the Champions League for me.
Yeah, so
that was a few months ago.
Yeah, so they beat the favourites. They beat the third favourites. They beat. I don't know where you'd put PSG. Would you put them as well, like somewhere like third or second favourites based on the signings they made?
Yeah, they were top 5. My top 5 going into this Champions League season were Liverpool, City, or when it panned out a little bit, but it was Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Bayern, PSG. Real Madrid weren't even in my top 5 to begin with.
Yeah, so they beat 3 of that top 5, and if they win on Saturday, they're gonna win. They're gonna beat 4 of the 5 favorites en route to the title. And then they've also been runaway winners in La Liga. And like, if you want to bring in an argument there, like you had Atletico faltering and you had Barca who they're going through their whole transition because like they've been run very badly over the past 3, 4, 5 years. And now they finally have that previous president back that brought in, that brought in Ronald. That was there for the Ronaldinho, Rijkaard era, and then for the start of the Guardiola era. So you expect them to get back onto their feet, but that's going to take a while. So you expected them to win the league based on everything that was going around, or at least like challenge alongside of Atletico, like Atletico to kick on, but Atletico didn't. So where would I rate it? It's a really tough one because like they lost to Sheriff on the opening day at home, didn't they?
I'll give you the 3 options. This is what came up when I sort of did it, and just because obviously I went from 03 to 04 to now. It's sort of, I've got a recollection of what we were talking about at that time and which teams we were talking about as the best teams at that time and going in and whatnot. So the 3 options are: they win it, and it coincides with them being the best team in Europe, or it results in them being the best team in Europe. So it matches up in terms of the Champions League. they win it, but you still think there's another team who's the best team in Europe, or it's a season where you could name 2 or 3 who might be the best team in Europe?
Like if you're looking at everything on paper, then they're not the best team in Europe. But if you look at their performances, they've put in some really good performances, and they've looked good, not over a span of 90 minutes, but over like in spurts, so I guess 10, 15, 20 minute spurts, like in those games against PSG, Chelsea, and City. Yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how I'd rate it. Whereas like that three-peat with Zidane, like they were clearly the maybe not the last season, but they were clearly the best team. Like they were pretty dominant in games as well. Like they were favorites going into games, whereas like going into these games, they weren't favorites to win any of them. And they're not even favorite. I don't think they're even favorites to win the final really either. So I'm just not sure where I rate it. Like I sort of want to mention, and like this would be like the biggest like kick in the balls to Real Madrid fans, but I sort of want to mention or rate them or rate this season by them to the Porto season of 03-04. Like, but it's not that much of a shock. Like it isn't that much of a shock compared to the Porto win. You know what?
It might be.
No,
it might be. No, they were outside of my top 5 going in.
You know what I might do? I might compare it to the AC Milan win in, was it 06-07?
06-07.
Yeah, because yeah. I don't think they were sort of a team that was on the decline, because like a lot of that team won was it the 2002 Champions League, and then they were runners up in
03.
03. So and then
03 and then 05 they were runners up, and then 07 they won it.
Yeah, so and like a lot of that team was like still there from that first final where they won it in 03, and then they lost.
Were Milan the best team in Europe that season?
I'd have to really go and have a look, but I don't think they were. I think that was. I think this would be very similar to Real Madrid right now.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go for the other Milan-Liverpool final. I thought you were going to compare Real Madrid to Liverpool in 05, to be quite honest.
No, because Liverpool, like, that was... Oh,
no, that team in the league. That team in the league were 5th, but in terms of the fairy tale run to the final, the unexpected nature of it, maybe a little bit like that. But
no, because Liverpool were like 10th, mate. They weren't even 10th favorites back then. Like there was so many teams that were above them. Whereas at least Real Madrid was like, you could argue that they probably might have been above Bayern Munich, or they were like 6th favorites. But they weren't.
No, not going into 6.
Yeah, but they weren't. But they weren't like miles off. Whereas Liverpool seemed like they were miles off. Like look, just and like that was like. But you can make the comparison that it was a Gerrard-inspired team, the same way that this is a Benzema-inspired team. But and I'm saying a lot of buts here, but I still think that the comparison is better to the AC Milan 07 team, because that was sort of a team that was coming to the end of its end of its generation, or the end of its run. Because did Maldini still play in that?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think he played. He definitely lifted the trophy.
But he was pretty much going to retire and everything, and like so a lot of that team was coming to the end of its run, and a lot of this team is coming to the end. You could say it's coming to the end of its run as well.
Yeah. So this question's clearly got you shook. If you want to compare it to that 06-07 Milan team, I think that's somewhat fair, because the only other club I can think of having a claim to being the best in Europe that time were Man United, but Milan beat Man United in the semi-final with Kaká scoring an outrageous goal at Old Trafford. I remember pulling an all-nighter to watch that game.
Was that header? The header to bring
the header between Ever and I think Brown, and then he just slots it past Van der Sar. Yeah,
that was beautiful.
And I think United were the only other club that I would say had a real claim to be the best in Europe. So the fact that Milan went on and won that, I put them as the best club in Europe, the consensus best at the end of the season. The Porto one was a good shout as well because I thought that season it was probably Arsenal or Milan who were the best. 04-05, Liverpool definitely weren't the best. Most of the time it links up until you get to I thought and then you've got sort of I thought maybe Juve were the best in 16-17 over Real. The rest actually link up to who the Champions League winner is. Until you get to 18-19 where I think you had Barca, Liverpool and City could all claim to be the best teams in Europe that season that Liverpool won 18-19, but Barca capitulated at Anfield. I guess a few clubs do that. So
what about
I would.
What about Inter in 2010?
Yeah, they were. Well, for me, they were the best club. But I guess people would argue Barca. Maybe you put Inter/Barca, but I think when you beat
Bayern,
the direct. Oh, not 2010 under Van Gaal. I never thought they were the best team in Europe. I thought Robin was sensational that season, but I still didn't put him on a level like Inter and even Barca. Really, I thought the final should have been Inter versus Barca, but alas, we got two-legged affair, and that was dramatic as hell. Remember that was the volcano where Barca had to take the bus to Italy because the super volcano from Iceland disrupted all the air travel.
And then they end up losing 3-1 at the San Siro.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they turned the 10-man defensive performance in the second leg.
Yeah. And they turned the sprinklers on him after the end of the second leg when Mourinho's celebrating. No, that was great. That was great fun.
I just want to mention though, like, because I mentioned the 07 AC Milan team again, another team that was led by Ancelotti.
Yeah, exactly right. So the similarities, maybe that is the best comparison in terms of. I think when we get to the end of the season. Oh, it might be hard if Liverpool lose this to put them in a list of best teams in Europe. But I think if you look back on it, probably the consensus would be there'd be three teams that, like, if you said Manchester City were the best team in Europe this season, I wouldn't firmly disagree against that. Or if you said Liverpool, or if Real Madrid end up winning the Champions League, then if you say them, I can't disagree. Especially with the route to the final in the knockout stages, beating four of the five best en route to winning it, I think would be the most incredible run maybe in the history of the competition in terms of the knockout stage.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah, I think it'd be fair enough to put three teams at the end of it, but I guess that's kind of what Real Madrid are playing for. I guess I wanted to contrast them because I wanted to say Real Madrid are playing for that honour of this season, as well as obviously the obvious one of the Champions League and the title and the trophy. And Liverpool are playing for the honour of, if you looked back on it, if you use my system, obviously you don't have to use my system as we've litigated. But if you use that system, then you could fairly say that Liverpool were the dominant European team for this 5-year period. When you look back on it and all said and done. So definitely the stakes are massive for both clubs. Before we leave the preview, I just wanted to gauge if you had any more thoughts than when we last talked about it a couple of weeks ago about how you see in the actual match pan out and what matchup do you think will be key and any tactical adjustments you could see. Starting lineups, whatever you wanted to talk about in terms of the actual match that we might see.
Well, Thiago went off injured against Wolves, so is there any update on that?
I haven't seen it. I've seen the update that Fabinho's back in training.
Mm-hmm. What about Van Dijk?
Thiago might be Thiago might be touch and go. Van Dijk, the last I heard, he said he was fine, but obviously he'll say that. But to be honest, I think he is fine. I think Klopp's being extra careful with him, really.
What was the issue with him anyway?
I don't actually know, but I think Klopp said at halftime they were talking of that FA Cup final, and they decided he was fine to go for the second half. But then they decided if we go into extra time, we're gonna we're going to take him off. So if he was good enough to keep playing then, I think he's fine. And I think Klopp's just being extra careful with him.
Yeah, because if he doesn't play, then
Massive.
I wouldn't say it's 100% Real win, but like they go in as favourites then, like, and they go in as strong. I reckon they go in as strong favourites as well.
I wouldn't go strong, but it would flip it from. I think at this stage, consensus would be that Liverpool are favourites at this stage. But if Van Dijk goes out, it flips that completely. But I don't think to the point of like strong Real Madrid favourites, but definitely favourites.
And what about Salah? Because like he's still sort of having that niggling injury, and I know he scored against Wolves.
Well, he played the finals.
Yeah, he played the final 20 minutes. But
well, I guess we talked about it in the Premier League wrap up. How I thought Klopp went in with the mentality that we're not going to win the league today. So obviously he didn't play Van Dijk and Salah. He only played at the end when there was a chance we could win the league. So I just think he's wrapping those guys in cotton wool. Thiago and I think Fabinho might be ready. Thiago's the one who scares me. I don't know if he'll be ready. He looked pretty dejected when he came off the pitch against Wolves.
I think you guys can do the job without Thiago because you have Henderson and Keita or Milner to come in to play. It can't be if Fabinho plays though. Fabinho's going to be a bigger loss. Both. Yeah, Fabinho's going to be a bigger loss than Thiago. So he especially like. Because I think Real have the better midfield three. Even if you play Henderson, Fabinho, and Thiago, I still think that Real's, even though it's on aging legs, I still think that they have a better midfield three. But especially if you guys have Fabinho missing and Thiago, I'm not sure how you guys are going to necessarily retain the ball as well as what you should.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Central midfield has been probably the problem position for the whole season. So you'd have to think that without them, then it goes to Henderson, Keita, and I don't know if Milner would start this game. Harvey Elliott's a bit young. Curtis Jones has been so hit and miss for the second half of this season. So that will be a tricky one if it's both Fabinho and Thiago. And there's no doubt Real Madrid will definitely have superiority, or they should have in the middle of the pitch. With a full strength, if it's Thiago, Henderson, and Fabinho, I would say that's almost a wash, that matchup between Real Madrid. I'll give you, if you said you think Real Madrid are a little bit better there, maybe just a little bit, but I wouldn't say much because I think Casemiro versus Fabinho is almost 1-for-1. And I think Modric versus Thiago is maybe Modric 0.2 the way he's been playing better than Thiago, but not much better. And Kroos versus Henderson, honestly, just for the fact that Kroos can't really run, I'd probably take Henderson.
Yeah, Henderson's a workhorse.
Yeah, exactly.
But Modric runs as much as Henderson.
Yeah, he definitely does. And that's probably why I'd give him the edge over Thiago as well. But they're both fantastic players in a very similar mould as well. But if we get to see full-strength midfields against each other, that would be a fantastic battle in the engine room there.
Yeah, and I think we've spoken about this. Like, how do you think that the Vinicius versus Trent matchup will go? Because
we touched on that.
I have a feeling Trent will. He won't have that freedom to roam down that right hand side, and he might be pinned back. Like Villarreal showed what happens when Trent and Robertson are both pinned back, especially in that first half. And I've already said my piece on that Villarreal game where before your goal came in, I didn't see Trent pretty much in Villarreal's half in the first half at all. But then the second half, before the goal came in, I saw him put in like 5 or 6 crosses, which I didn't see him put in. And that's because they didn't pin him back. So your fullbacks are so important. So depending on how much freedom they get from Valverde, and I'm guessing Valverde is going to play, and Vinicius, they're so integral to how you play as well. I'm unsure how much control you'll be able to establish with Vinicius and Valverde pinning them back.
Well, I don't think necessarily Valverde is the one you need to worry about if you're Robertson, but Robertson does his work diligently anyway. But I'm not. I think Valverde is a fantastic player, but he doesn't scare me the way Vinicius scares me on the other
He's a
side.
workhorse, so he'll pretty much man mark Robertson, whereas Vinicius will pin him back by threatening to run in behind him. That they play very different, like obviously, like in that way.
And so in that point, I think the more crucial matchup is Vinicius against whoever plays centre back next to Van Dijk for Liverpool, because I think we've already seen that Klopp's not going to change the way he plays and approaches matches for anybody. So he's not going to ask Trent to do a job on Vinicius. He's going to ask Trent to do a job on him by being in the spaces where Vinicius doesn't want to pick him up. So obviously then the engine room, the midfield becomes an important battle to see which one of those players will be getting on the ball more often than the other. And then obviously I think from there, whichever team can get the ball to that player has the ascendancy in the match. And that really is, for me, looking at it from this vantage point, looking at it going into the match, that's the key battle of the whole game for me, Vinicius against Trent, because I think both teams will be asking their guy to stay attacking, stay aggressive, and create things, while not necessarily probably asking them to do a job on the other. So that becomes such a key matchup. I agree on the other side, Valverde will probably man mark Robertson. I guess that will be up to Mane to take up the spaces, or Diaz. The good thing about that matchup as well, like you say, if I've seen it this season, we've added it a little bit to our game. Robertson can stay a little bit deeper with Diaz hugging the touchline a little bit more on that side, and if we can get Diaz 1v1 versus Carvajal, because I expect Diaz to start the match or have a big impact on it at some point at least. But if that's the way he wants to approach it, so we're not asking Robbo to necessarily... He'll make decoy runs, but we won't ask him to be the 12 or 13 assist man that he normally is. He'll be more of a decoy because we know Valverde will go with him. And then can we allow Diaz to go one-on-one against Carvajal or Vasquez or whoever they start there? Nacho maybe. Should be Carvajal. I think it will be Carvajal there. And we've seen him be suspect this season. So that's another key matchup. I guess those two diagonals on the pitch will be key matchups, but it all stems from the midfield, like most football matches. If you can win in there, and if you can get a ascendancy from that position on the pitch, you can start dictating things, and you can start making sure the game's played on your terms. So that's a huge battle in there.
I actually think the key matchup will be Henderson / Fabinho on Benzema, because Benzema occupies that space. He doesn't play on the defenders like a traditional striker, like a Lukaku or a Lewandowski or the names escape me. But yeah, he doesn't play on the final striker like a traditional number 9. So if Fabinho or if Henderson plays because Fabinho doesn't in that holding role, I reckon that's the key battle. Just because of how Benzema's been playing. Not necessarily Van Dijk versus Benzema or Konate / Matip versus Benzema.
It'll be a team effort from a Liverpool's point of view. Van Dijk, I don't like it when he goes into midfield to follow strikers. So
he won't be.
That's a great...
It will be given to Fabinho or Henderson.
Exactly. So it's a team effort. They got to make sure the communication's spot on, which will be hard given how many people will be there and that it's a final. And obviously that's a great shout because Benzema, for the link-up play aspect, scares the life out of me because Liverpool play so open in that midfield. The only thing I could say is if Robertson does play a little bit more withdrawn and Valverde is playing 1v1, maybe maybe instead of bombing on, Robertson can help supplement the midfield and take a little bit of that space away from Benzema trying to drop in there. Or otherwise, I would strongly look at maybe playing a double pivot if I was Liverpool, because leaving all that space around Fabinho, who's not the most mobile, or Henderson, whose defensive instincts aren't the same as a Fabinho, against a Benzema who's so intelligent at being the link-up man and the outball. But again, I mean, that scares the life out of me because you only need to get through once and get the ball to Benzema. But Liverpool are so good in their press that they can put on pressure, and it'll be interesting to see if Militao and Alaba will be key as well, because if he can get on the ball, and he's got a good range of passing for a centre-back, obviously. If he could start finding Benzema just past the midfield and get Modric running off it, that'll be crucial for them playing past the Liverpool press. So really what we're saying is there's key matchups all over the pitch.
Hey, the thought just occurred to me, like, what happens if Rodrigo plays instead of on that right-hand side instead of Valverde? Do you then think, because you have then two very similar attacking outlets in Rodrigo and Vinicius, that would then, instead of Robertson being man-marked, he would have to be even more defensive because he has a runner in behind him?
Nah, it'd go the other way for me, because this is what Liverpool are. Klopp will see that, and he'll want his fullbacks to win the individual battle. So he'll tell Robertson, attack more and push Rodri. Either push him back, or we're going to trust that you can have more influence on the game further up the pitch than he can have influence on the game. We're going to try and push them back into their half, and so I think it'll have the opposite effect. I don't think Klopp will bow to anyone. He'll obviously make plans for Benzema, but if last season he didn't change his tactics when we were losing however many games on the spin at home, I can't see him wanting to change anything, even for a Champions League final. There'll be little things that they do and little things that he's made them aware of going into the game, but if he sees something like that, he'd rather go at that sort of thing rather than say, "Oh, we got to be scared of Rodrigo now," because I don't think he'll do it with Vinicius. So if he doesn't do it with Vinicius, I don't think he's going to do it with the Rodrigo. Make any sort of special defensive changes for that.
And where do you see Real Madrid's weak points? Because obviously with Liverpool, like, we've seen, I guess, the blueprint of how to attack them, and that's through the fullbacks. So how would you then set up and then attack Real Madrid?
You got to, and Liverpool, both these teams' strengths, how we talked about what a strength Vinicius could be, and Benzema in particular, being the link-up man and dropping into clever spaces, that definitely has the ability to kill Liverpool if they could deliver him the ball. But Liverpool's strength is that front three can run into channels and run in behind from delivery from midfield or the fullbacks. And that's one of Real Madrid's weaknesses. As we saw in the game at the Etihad, it's huge that Casemiro will be back. That's massive. Or not back, but in the team, should be in the team. Because he can clog up a lot of those spaces. But can Liverpool play with the intensity that gets them into those spaces quicker than Casemiro can cover them? Because we know Alaba wants to go out wide and defend. And we know Militao wants to go out wide and defend. And if you could get into those spaces quicker than Casemiro could block them up, then there are massive wide open spaces to attack. But I think, I don't know, that's sort of, you're somewhat asking Liverpool to play a lower block, because I think if they press really high, and I don't generally like my teams pressing all the way into the opposition's defensive third. I prefer somewhat a mid-block where you can actually leave space and entice their defence out a little bit so that you can attack space. Obviously, that's one way that Liverpool can attack Real, is the normal way of applying pressure, counter-pressing off second balls, making sure that Real Madrid have no time on the ball, and just felt under pressure deep in their own half. But another way, and I don't think Klopp will do it, but if I was to set up the team, I'd probably go in a little bit of I'd just drop a little bit. I wouldn't drop all the way back, but I'd drop a little bit and be a little bit more cautious of Benzema dropping into space. So I don't want the midfielders pressing with the forward men as much. But I would be using triggers of when that ball could go into a Kroos in particular, or a Valverde at the wrong angles. And then can you counter and can you drag Militao and Alaba out into those wide areas by making quick runs into those channels behind the fullbacks? But I think Liverpool will go about it the normal way, try and outwork Real Madrid. And if they have their full strength midfield, there's a chance they could do that. It's just, I don't know. I don't know which way this game's going to go, because I think, like we've just been talking about, there's so many strengths and weaknesses that kind of like lead into what the other team's strengths and weaknesses are. So what we're hoping for is, if you're a neutral, is just a really fun match. And I think you've got the right teams in the final to give you a fun match. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to like summarize it. I guess like you're going to see a very fun match, and I'd say it's going to be similar to Man City, Real Madrid, like that. Both games, the second game maybe not so much. Like they seemed like both teams were pretty cautious, but the first game was a very fun match for the neutral. And considering that these two teams don't play each other in the domestically, and like we've said, the domestic finals are quite boring. I can't really see it being boring, because like they haven't played each other since last year's quarterfinals, right? Yeah, so that should be interesting. So how do you see the result going then, or like do you want to give a prediction?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to give a prediction, because, like I said, it would just be out of my ass. Like I don't know which team's strengths are going to shine brighter on the day. I'm hoping that Benzema's just a little bit off it, because if he's a little bit off it, I think that Real Madrid team are severely weakened. I'm hoping we have Thiago and Fabinho fit, obviously, but I want to see, because I just think that would be a fantastic matchup in midfield if everyone from that midfield of Real Madrid and Liverpool are fit. I think that's a really good matchup, but I can't commit to a prediction. I don't know if you feel strongly about one way or the other about a prediction either.
I'm not going to predict it as like an actual score, but I feel like Real Madrid are going to win it, and there's a couple of reasons. Like they've had a longer rest, they've had no sort of fatigue or injury scares going into the game. Like you guys have had question marks over like whether they're big question marks or small ones, over Van Dijk, over Fabinho. That Fabinho is a bigger one, obviously the biggest one. Now Thiago, Salah as well. His not only his like fitness in terms of like obviously injury, but like his form as well has been a bit of a question mark. And I just feel like Real Madrid are going to be a fresher team, and I think that that home crowd, that Paris crowd, is going to be on Real Madrid's side, because Benzema is the one that's leading it. And I know that they knocked out PSG, but I think that also because of the French hate for the English, I think they'd rather see and I'm not sure how much of the stadium is actually going to be made up of, I guess, neutrals, like, and what the allocation is between Liverpool and Real Madrid supporters in terms of tickets. But if say like 20% of the stadium is neutrals, that I'd say like the majority of those 20% are going to be for Real Madrid, rather than Liverpool. So, and I think Liverpool might even get a little bit of a hostile welcome just because of the Benzema factor as well. So who knows whether there's going to be any antics in terms of hotel sirens and all that stuff that we see. Probably not as guaranteed as what you would see if they were playing in Madrid, or in Spain for that matter. But I just have this feeling Real Madrid will get it, and it's probably a perfect moment for me to reveal that little fun fact that I had that I alluded
finally.
to 2 weeks ago. So you have to go back to the 2012 final that Chelsea won. So that's when it like after that one, that's when it started. Every winner of the Champions League had a Croatian player playing for them.
Wait, so Real Madrid need to win it so that streak obviously continues.
Yeah, so that streak needs, like, if they win it, because I think after Bayern lost that final, they won the next one, and they had Mandzukic in the squad. Then was it Real Madrid then who won after that? And they obviously had Modric, and then Barca won it, and they had Rakitic. Then Real Madrid win 3 on the trot after that. They have Modric, obviously, and they have Kovacic. And then who was the winner after the? Liverpool had Lovren, and then who won it after Liverpool?
Bayern.
Bayern had Perisic in the team, and then last year they had Kovacic. So it's a little bit of, I guess, like a fun thing, and like Lovren mentioned it last year on his Instagram. He's like, Man City would have won it if they had a Croatian in the team, because like you have to go back all the way to the Chelsea win in 2010. I don't think there was anyone playing for that team. So Liverpool don't have I guess fate on their side in terms of that, or that superstition on their side.
Yeah, but if you want to go back to the last time Liverpool played Real Madrid in Paris, 1981, what's that? That might
40
be,
years ago.
I'm thinking. Was that the last time Real Madrid lost in a final? I think it might be.
I'm not sure.
So, if fate, we can look for different things.
Yeah, but this one's more recent.
10 years is long enough to have a Croatian win in the Champions League / European Cup. It's time for that run to end, I'm thinking.
Yeah, this one's more recent though than your little last time in Paris.
Yeah, but this one involves the exact teams.
Yeah, but not the exact players.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Anyway,
that's my little fun fact.
Yeah, I thought that. I don't know why I didn't come to that conclusion. I guess I didn't. But yeah, I've been hanging out for that one.
Yeah, on the edge of your seat.
So naturally, we've been talking for over an hour and a half about a preview to the Champions League final. As we saw last week, we went for 40 minutes on the third team. So heaven knows what we'd do if we went to the second and first team. We might go for a 3-hour pod. But we've decided to leave the second and first team until after the Champions League final. For that first pod after the Champions League final, we'll do a review of what we saw and do second and first team. And I wish I didn't talk so much because I'm just dying to get these teams out there. But
yeah, you tried to blame me because you thought that I called Liverpool's run garbage.
That's what I heard. All right? Maybe the people will hear that conversation as well. Maybe they won't. But I had to defend our run to the final.
I called it questionable. That's all. Or I called it an easier run. So not necessarily garbage.
Why'd you come out? Why'd you come out with those bad intentions? Now we can't get our second and first team done. Oh.
Well, I think the second and third team deserve, I guess, a lot more time, and time is of the essence.
Well, attention. Hopefully, we want to catch the people when they can still give their undivided attention to that discussion. So we'll say we're doing it for your own good, but really it's killing me inside, and I really want to just get them out there. But I don't have any. If we're finishing on that, I don't have anything else to add in terms of a preview, except for the fact that I am I'm quite nervous. This is my fifth Liverpool Champions League final in my lifetime. Only won 2 of them. So hopefully 3-2 is a pretty good record. That's what I'm hoping for. But I guess the first thing I'm hoping for, actually, I don't care. Even if it's a shit game and we win it, I don't care. As long as finals are there for winning. They're not there for entertaining games. But I guess if we lose, can there be a reason why I got up at 5 a.m.? Can there be some sort of entertainment? So I don't know. As you can tell, I'm all over the place, and I'm pretty nervous about, because as I've made clear over the last couple of weeks, this is the one that means the most to me. So I would love to be able to beat the undoubted emperors of Europe. I would love Liverpool to be able to do that and put themselves right alongside AC Milan as the second most storied club in Champions League / European Cup history. So a lot riding on it. Nev, I don't know if you had any other last thoughts to leave us with.
You know, the way you were going to sign off then, it was pretty much perfect. And I was going to ask you, I guess, a irrelevant question, but how are you going to watch the final? Like, are you going to watch it with some friends or with a bag of chips or what?
I don't know. I'm waiting to hear what they're doing. So either way, I'm all right, because obviously it's good to watch it with friends because that sort of keeps me more level and less nervous. But I mean, watching it myself, I can just sort of let loose. Be who I can be when I'm watching Liverpool games.
It's a bit shitty for you as well, like, because it's what, a 5 a.m. start, so like, you know, you're not hungry to eat any food, and like you just feel like you feel almost like waking up that early, and like especially if you go to bed late, like around 12, and then you only have like 5 hours sleep, like you feel dirty and not hungry. You have no appetite, and like it's just crap. It's a crap environment. Whereas like, for instance, here, like my plans were sort of ruined by my girlfriend's work schedule, because she was originally rostered on to work tomorrow morning, and then she's going to work tomorrow night. So our plan was to have like a barbecue leading up into the game, and then have that while eat while we're watching the game. But now she's only going to finish and like come home for the second half. So our plans are a little bit derailed, but at least they're somewhat okay, I suppose. But we're probably just going to get a pizza or something and have that.
So that still sounds good. It's still prime time, so
yeah. It's still, you still have an appetite, like at least if you're watching from Europe. Whereas like, you know, it's hard to sort of plan things, because like if you go to, for instance, Matthias's house, you got to drive at 4:30 in the morning, like
freezing as well. It's winter.
I think I've made that drive once or twice, like in the past, like just getting up for a semi-final or a final, like to go to your house or Matthias's, and like you just cannot be stuffed, because like you're just so warm in bed, like in your pajamas and stuff, and just all cozy and it's winter, whereas here it's pretty much summer. Like it's been 30 degrees every single day for the past like 3 weeks. But yeah, like I do not envy you and your routine of having to wake up for the final.
Yeah, it's not fun. Who knows, if I'm not watching it with friends, I might just turn off all notifications and just wake up when I was going to wake up and watch it. I don't know yet.
No, you can't do that for a final.
No, you can. Trust me, you can. I've been doing it for a while, and you don't have to get up at stupid o'clock, and you don't have to deal with the cold. As long as you just don't go on any social media, don't check any messages.
Yeah,
it's all good.
You gotta be super careful. But even then, like if you activate or like press on the wrong thing, like while trying to get to the game, you can like a piece of like news can come up on the side, or depending on like what app you're using or whatever, like something can come up to just derail it, no matter how hard. And I've had this like while watching, because UFC here is absolute crap to watch, because it's like at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. I think by the time the main event is on, it's like 5 or 6 a.m. So I watch it after the fact, and I'm like halfway through the event, and then like just like out of habit, I just start scrolling through Facebook, and then like the results come up, and I'm like, I'm just like far out, like just habit brought me to scrolling through Facebook and ruining the results.
No, I can avoid that one. But what I had on the semi-final with Liverpool v Real, for some reason the app on the subscription we need to watch it. I guess the game was going live. I started a little bit late, so I put on the game and it was playing. And then all of a sudden it skipped to the 55th minute and I saw we were 2-0 up from when we were 0-0. And I'm like, why have you done that? Like, I've been good. I haven't got on Facebook or Instagram, and then it's just skipped to the... Like, the good news was we were 2-0 up, so...
Yeah.
Like, I felt okay about it. I remember once when I was still at school, I used to ask my stepdad to wake me up for the games. And oftentimes, if they were early enough, I'd be in that sleep where you'd get woken up, but you'd fall straight back asleep. So that happened to me, I think, in the 08-09 season. We beat Real Madrid 5-1 at home. And my stepdad didn't make sure that I woke up. So then he came back in to get me, and it was already 20 minutes into the game, and I think we were 2 or 3-0 up. And I was happy we were up, but I was pissed that I missed it.
Imagine me being asleep for the Barca semi-final, like at Anfield.
I didn't, and full disclosure, I didn't watch that game live because I thought we were already out of it. Yeah, I didn't, but I didn't get any scores or anything, but yeah, that I didn't watch it. I thought that one was done.
I think everyone did, but like, you know what was weird about that one? Oh, man, we were about to sign off, but like now we've gone on another tangent. But you know what was really weird about that one? You remember Dembele had that 1-on-1 in like the 92nd or 93rd minute?
Yeah.
When he missed that, I was like, I don't have a good feeling about this. Like, he could have put it to bed, and 4-0. I don't see you guys scoring 5 at Anfield when it's 4-0. I can't see you scoring 4 when it's 4-0, but like 3 in a game seems achievable. And then once you have 3 already, like to your name, getting a 4th is easy. Similar to like how City scored 2 goals against Aston Villa, and you're like, a 3rd goal is pretty much inevitable now. And yeah, it just felt like that, like when he missed.
Yeah, especially 4 goals. I don't know if anything's impossible. European Anfield on a European night. But the funny thing was with that first game, I watched the first leg live, the one we lost 3-0 to Barca. And I was so frustrated after I had to go for a run at 6 o'clock or whatever time it was. I just needed to burn off some steam. I was so annoyed by that game. But I thought we were probably the better team for the 90 minutes, but they just had Messi, and Messi just put on his masterclass. That free kick was something else. And another thing, the Camp Nou is just a massive pitch. It looks huge. Same with Old Trafford. It just looks like one of these pitches where, I don't know, there's just so much space out there, it looks like. Whereas you look at like a Stamford Bridge or something, it doesn't nearly look as big. And it looks like you can close down the spaces. So I don't know. I thought we just got tired, but that was another game where Klopp said, screw it, we're going to try and be the best team on the pitch, much like what I think the approach will be on Saturday evening for you, Sunday morning for us.
Yeah, and that's probably the perfect way to sign off, I think.
Yeah, so after the longest sign off in podcast, maybe history, we'd have to go through all of them, but we've gone off on another tangent. We will. I'm hoping. I'm going to make sure it happens. Unless I don't know, I do another deep dive. I don't know, but I'm going to make sure that we get those first and second team of the year selections out there on the review pod after the final. So Nev, been a pleasure. We got a bit heated tonight, so I'm hoping the people like hearing that portion of the pod.
Well, at least they know that you got a fiery side to you now.
I think they might have already known that. But definitely came out. It definitely came out after you called our run garbage. Or that's what I heard. I know we said questionable, but I heard garbage, so I just went.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure despite the argument, but I'm looking forward to talking to you on early next week and hopefully discussing a Liverpool win, but I'm not certain of that.
Let's see how it goes. May the best team on the night win.
Yeah, I guess so. But football doesn't always work like that. So may Liverpool win, please.
No,
Guys, thanks for listening.
no
And tune
treble.
in again early. Tune in again early next week, and we'll have the review and finally the first and second Team of the Year selections. So, thanks again for listening, and tune in soon.